This is Meteo Mundo.
Hi everyone, I'm Meteo Mundo Chief Meteorologist Rusty McCraney. Thank you for joining us here midweek on this Wednesday video. Thank you for liking the video and subscribing to the channel, because I promise you, if you want to keep up to date, what's going to be a very active week ahead, you're going to want to go ahead and hit that subscribe button. There are several areas of interest to get into. It's the same three that we had from yesterday as well. We have this area in yellow, a potential subtropical storm could develop off of the east coast of Florida, the northern Bahamas late in the week and into the weekend. We still have Hurricane Nigel, which is moving north and east, and then this area in red, which is really going to garner our interest the remainder of the week. A tropical wave moving off of the west coast of Africa with a high chance of development here. And in the next 4 to 5 days, more than likely we'll at least get a tropical depression. Hurricane Center is putting the chance of development already at 70%. A little bit zoomed in on the end of this, if you will, the end of the development area. And just notice that it is getting closer as we get towards the weekend to the leeward and the windward islands, the U.S. and British Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico. But I got to tell you this, the models are all over the place on what, if anything, develops and the intensity of that. That's actually very common when you're talking about an area that hasn't even formed yet. It's really just an open tropical wave. So I want to show you the GFS model. I showed you it yesterday. This is a more aggressive model as far as development and wrapping up a system and bringing it into the windward and the leeward islands and the Puerto Rico area as we get about 7 days out, about early next week. So the GFS model, again, it's just one model. Take it with a large grain of salt, but it has been relatively consistent the last 24 hours and trying to wrap up a system in that area of disturbed weather on the western side of the Atlantic and then moving it into the windward and the leeward islands. So let me just kind of stair step this model for you here. And you can see it does wrap up a system and bringing it into places like Guadeloupe and Anguilla and St. Kitts and Nevis and then the U.S. and British Virgin Islands. Again, this is one model and one model run. If you live in this area, don't take this as gospel, okay? I'm going to show you the European model, which absolutely is developing nothing at this point in time. But it's just for, again, informational purposes, just so you know that one of the larger models out there is actually trying to develop something and then bring it into these areas. So if you live in these areas, the windward, the leeward islands, the U.S. and British Virgin Islands, and eventually Puerto Rico as well, just keep watching. I'll get you updated every day as we go through the week. And again, it's one of the models that shows some development, and it is something to closely monitor. But again, there's not a lot of skill with these models this far out in time, especially with no actual true close center of circulation. This is the European model for the same time frame. It doesn't wrap up anything. If you see there's a little bit of a yellow there, that would be a very weak disturbance that would be moving north and west of the windward and the leeward islands. So the two main global models couldn't be farther different than what we are right now, from the European model having basically nothing in the area to the GFS model really wrapping something up. So again, just keep that in mind. Going to let that run for you one more time. And even the GFS has kind of another area of disturbed weather right behind it, kind of that tropical train getting going, but certainly more aggressive right now in development compared to the European model. Let's talk about that other area of interest, the one in yellow here with a potential subtropical system that could get going off the northern side of the Bahamas and off the east coast of Florida. Right now, it's just a very broad area of disturbed weather. And again, we might get a mid-level circulation, but we're not going to be looking at true tropical development coming out of this. And I wouldn't expect that to be happening anytime soon. Show you the model here for this time. I'm actually going to show you the same model, the GFS model, but I'm going to drop it back in time just a little bit here so we can loop it for you. And I'll put that into motion, and you'll start to see a system try and ramp up. But again, it's very disorganized. There's not a lot to it. Wouldn't expect at this point in time, again, a true low-level center of circulation. More than likely a mid-level of circulation, dry air already coming in the north and the west sides. But as I mentioned yesterday, it's going to really kick up the surf and sea conditions from the northern side of the Bahamas, the east coast of Florida, Georgia, and the Carolina coastline. Very rough surf and sea conditions. And it's also going to bring some potential tropical storm force wind gusts as well. And again, this GFS model, if I kind of go a little bit further north and east, it does try and basically hang on to whatever is going to be developing and bring it just right up the coastline, where we could have some, almost gale force winds kind of riding up towards the New England coastline here. So it depends on if center of circulation actually moves on shore, but it's going to be a pretty wet late part of the weekend into the weekend for this area. I also showed you this yesterday, and I want to do it again. I want to look at the winds in the area, and these are going to be your wind gusts. I'm going to put that on, and I take off the reflectivity for us here. So let me get into that. Click that button right there, put that into motion, and this is going to be your wind gusts for the same time frame. Now, I've already mentioned that it's going to be very wet for the Bahamas because of this, and you can start to see that wind developing. Again, I don't expect a very defined center of circulation with this, but certainly the opportunity to wrap up some decent winds out of this as we get towards the weekend. You can see that again. We'll start to see, even well before that center gets closer to shore, we're going to have some potential tropical storm force wind gusts, especially for the Carolina coastline. Again, anything in red is over 40 miles an hour. So now you are getting into tropical storm force gusts. Again, these aren't sustained winds, these are gusts, but it could be very rough for places in the Outer Banks up towards Norfolk and Virginia Beach, and eventually up towards Delaware in New Jersey, and then eventually even New York as well. It might kind of fizzle as it gets a little bit further north, or kind of almost separate and the larger wind field moves offshore. But again, for the entire United States East Coast, and especially early in the time frame from the Carolinas back down towards the east coast of Florida and the Bahamas, very, very rough surf and sea conditions. I want to also take a look at that rain in the Bahamas, as I've mentioned. And again, it's been wet for places like Freeport and Walker's Cay and Marsh Harbor and New Providence and Andros. The Northwest Bahamas have seen a good amount of rain for us here, and that's exactly what we'll continue to see over the next couple of days. That is not going to change. I'm going to take off the wind model and go back to the radar and put that into motion. Now it's going to go kind of fast, so I'll pause it once we get towards the end. But just to show you here over the next couple of days, as that subtropical system tries to develop, we're going to stay fairly wet. It's going to be on and off rain, but it could be some heavier downpours. This is actually going to be over the weekend here. And although we may not have widespread rain, it could still be very heavy at times for places like Freeport and Lucaya. And as I've mentioned, we're also going to have some very rough surf and sea conditions in this area as well. So looking at the 5-day forecast in Nassau, we're just going to stay wet because of this. There'll be some breezy conditions. I don't expect tropical storm force winds by any means, but just, good 15 to 20 knot winds over the next couple of days. 80% chance for showers and storms the remainder of today, 60% chance on Thursday. Still expecting that subtropical system as at least tries to wrap up a little bit to pull the moisture a little bit farther north. It doesn't mean we'll be completely dry, and we could still see some heavier rain over the weekend, but the chance a little bit lower at 40%. Daytime highs will remain in the upper 80s. Again, if you want the newest forecast in your area, the latest on these tropical systems, please subscribe to the channel. Please like the video as well. Thanks for tuning in, friends. We'll see you next time right here on Meteo Mundo.